Welcome to the Friends of Work podcast, the podcast about mastering emotional intelligence at work. What are your tips for anybody going into business, particularly women of color stepping into business?
What my first thought was run away. No, don't run away. Don't run away. Don't run away. I always like to make sure people do a very serious gut check. I was talking with a young entrepreneur the other day, and I was saying not everyone's cut out for this, right? Not everyone has the chops to be an entrepreneur. A lot of people glamorize it. I've seen this a lot in African American churches where they're like, the road to freedom and wealth is entrepreneurship, and you got to work for yourself and do for yourself because ain't nobody going to do for you. And I was like, I can go to corporate America and make twice as much money as I currently, and I will be fine. I will be A-okay with the direct deposit on the 15th and the 30th of the month. Trust and believe, okay? In order for entrepreneurs to succeed, they need employees. Usually. So sometimes your role is to be an employee, and that's okay. You got to know what your fit is, right? And what your temperament is. Can you deal with the risk of entrepreneurship? Not everyone can. Do you have the business acumen as well as the talent to think full circle of all that business implies? A lot of creative types like me get into business because they love the creativity, right? They love doing what they want to do, but they suck as a business owner, right? They don't have the mindset. They don't know how to deal with their accounting. They don't know how to deal with sales and marketing. They're just a great technician.
That was Shala W. Graham, the founder of Creative Colony, a co-working space downtown Silver Spring, Maryland, and a serial entrepreneur. Shala is funny, has an infectious, bubbly energy, and above all, she's authentically herself. Just before I play you our complete conversation, here's a quick announcement. In the coming weeks, the Friends of Work podcast with Toye will be bringing you even more exciting guests and events. To support this podcast and to learn more about our future plans, please go to patreon.com/friendsatwork. That is patreon.com/friendsatwork. Thank you.
My name is Shala W. Graham, and I am one of those crazy serial entrepreneurs who does a little too much sometimes, from branding to co-working space to photography.
You just start out being an entrepreneur from the get-go?
Almost. So I worked for a PR firm in D.C. for a year after I graduated. I actually went to work. I was working from home for a guy in California, and we were supposed to both love Jesus so much, but I couldn't tell by his behavior. And so that led to many tears. And after a couple months, we're like, this isn't going to work. And so that's when I started going, what I thought was just going to be my moonlighting design business suddenly became full-time. And that was, so that was a year out of college. So
wow,
I've been doing entrepreneurship full-time since I was 23.
Nice. That sounds good, I think. Okay, so how has the journey been so far? I want to hear from you. What's it been like?
It's an adventure. It is one of those things that will kind of take you to the mountaintop, and it's so exciting and it's so thrilling, but it'll also keep you very close to the foot of Jesus. People will ask me, well, what was your business plan when you started your business? And I was like, man, my business plan was a prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, please bless the work of my hands. Amen. Like literally every day. That was my business plan. I prayed it every day, and that mess worked. It still works, just in case you want to copy my business plan.
I like that business plan.
But it was one of those things where, it's scary, right? Because you don't always know what to expect. Your money's not guaranteed, right? But your mortgage is a guaranteed bill. Your car and all of those things are guaranteed bills. So that's what I mean. It keeps you very close to the foot of the cross because you don't, each day is not promised to you, and you don't always have the answers. I was so young. I'm still so young, I like to think. And I didn't know what I was doing, especially when I first started out. So it was just a lot of seeking advice and praying. But when you had those amazing moments, when you had the right team, the perfect project, when things were super rewarding and, everything was working like a well-engined oil, you're like, yes. Look at this. This is amazing.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
I know what that feeling is like when everything, it seems like all the stars are aligned.
Right.
Like this is working as it should.
Yeah.
And you wish it worked like that all the time.
If only, if only. That's how God keeps you close to him. He's like, I gotta like throw a little something in there. Make sure you don't, I remember when I first started business, I was a year into it, maybe. And I started feeling a little puffed up. Right. And I was like, man, I was valedictorian of all of these schools. And I'm this smart and that smart and boop, boop, boop. And I remember one day out of the blue, my husband goes, you know what, Shala? God has just blessed you so much. Like, you don't deserve anything you have. Like, you're so young. You don't. And I was like, true. And I just had to like immediately like, okay, Shala, humble out. Like, you don't deserve nothing. Your stuff ain't amazing. Like, this was just God deciding to bless you. And the world doesn't care about your grades in school. Like, you can fail tremendously with all the degrees in the world.
That's very true. I mean, just to think about it, that when you're in school, you think your grades are everything, right? Like, oh, I'm the highest scoring in such and such.
Right.
And then you step out in the world and nobody cares.
Right.
Or even the schools you went to. I mean, the people who went to like the Ivy League schools and stuff, and you're like,
yeah,
where are they now? They're working for the guys who went to the no-name schools.
Right. In some cases, yes.
In many cases, when you think about it, most of the small businesses in this country are not started by Ivy Leaguers.
Oh, they're not. No.
So,
no.
And they're the ones, and who hires the Ivy Leaguers to come there in their suits?
Right. Yeah. No, that's a very good point. I don't imagine that the Ivy Leaguers go to school in that kind of vein in order to start their own business, right? They should be smart enough to know that that's not the requirement. They're going into corporate America, places that feel, oftentimes corporate America was again started, right? Apple was started by a small business owner, right? Hewlett Packard were two guys, right? Small business owners, and then it grew. But in terms of the question, I think that it really only matters when you're trying to go to the next school, right? So, my GPA is important on my transcript for grad school.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's when people are really looking at it. And so now, when I get resumes, once you're past kind of like a certain age, I'm like, why are you putting your GPA on your resume? Like, no one cares. I just need to know that you went to school or you had some sort of formal training in this. I don't want to say don't try to get good grades, right? Because it doesn't matter. I think it shows work ethic, and commitment, the ability to follow rules. Obey is one of my favorite words. And so it shows me like, okay, so you know how to obey, you know how to follow, you know how to execute. At the very least, it shows me that, right? You're disciplined and you're organized, ideally. Usually you're pretty organized. So I think it's worth it in that sense from like a character standpoint.
Yeah.
But it's not everything. And I don't want at a certain point I don't want to see it. I expect to see it from someone fresh out of college.
Exactly.
The first couple of years. But once you've been in for a handful of years, don't come to me as a senior executive showing me your GPA. No, you should have more accomplishments than your GPA.
Exactly. I mean, more real world accomplishments about stuff you've actually done.
Right.
And I personally, my thing is, I don't really pay more attention to academic qualifications. I'm like, can you do the job?
Right.
It's because I come from the IT background, engineering and IT. There are a lot of people who have the grades who can't do the job.
Right. Very true.
And so I really don't care if you were the best in your class.
Yeah.
Can you do the job, or can you learn quickly?
Yeah.
Do you have that aptitude? And if grades show that, fine. But I would hire somebody who doesn't have a qualification, who I can find out through other means that they have aptitude.
Yeah.
Than somebody who has, more degrees than a thermometer.
Yeah. I know a lot of very successful people who are just now finishing their degree after working for 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
And some who are, raised an entire family with grandkids and six figures and everything else and never finished school. And I was like, well, do it, honey. Like, I'm over here trying to pay my student loans for grad school.
Like,
I'm kind of jealous. Like, I didn't get that memo.
Like, do the important thing. If you can do it without going to school, do it. I mean, but going to school is important in this day and age. It just opens your world up to other opportunities, but grades are not,
Yeah, it's
absolute.
a great network.
Yeah, it's also great for
network.
networking too. So those are the advantages, I should say. So, what made you start Creative Colony, one of your many enterprises?
So this was summer 2013. And I had been in one of our county incubators for my design firm for the last 4 years. And I was like, I need to graduate from the incubator. I feel incubated, right? And, I had my staff, and I was planning on just opening, like leasing a commercial space with a couple extra offices that I could sublet to offset the cost and give me the opportunity to grow within that space. And I was at a creative morning workshop, and there was a photographer who said there are a lot of independent creative professionals like myself who don't have a place to work. And I thought, well, I've been fortunate to be in an incubator in my county for so long. And I learned about it through a friend, actually a friend from church. And I just went down this rabbit hole of seeing what the opportunity was for independent entrepreneurs in the district and in the area. And in that kind of search, I stumbled upon co-working. And I was like, oh, what is this? This is interesting. And like the next day, I'm in front of my team, and I'm like, we're opening a co-working space. And it really was this desire to support particularly creative entrepreneurs, but support the entrepreneurial landscape in our community, because they're just, all of the co-working spaces were in the district at the time. They're starting to make their way out into, the outlying suburbs of the district. But they weren't here. They weren't here in Silver Spring. They weren't here much in Montgomery County.
I believe you were one of the first, if not the first, downtown that I know of, at least.
Yes. I'm claiming it, daggone it. I'm claiming the first. There is a space that kind of existed, but it didn't really function as a co-working space. It probably had maybe 8 to 6 people who basically shared an office, but they didn't really market and function like a traditional co-working space might. So I was like, I'm not counting you. I'm owning this, or at least I can say we're the first co-working space in downtown Silver Spring cater to the creative entrepreneurial spirit. We want to qualify things, but that's what made me want to start it. I was like, what? I had great support systems that are no longer available now. That incubator I was in is no longer existent, right? The county made a strategic decision to focus its investment in like biotech, those kind of engineering, the kind of companies that will be your HP and Apples, that are going to suddenly be able to hire 100 people and create tax revenue, where small creative businesses don't grow like that. That's not how they're ever really going to do, right? And so, I get it, right? I appreciate you wanting to get the most bang for your buck. I understand the business of that, but it kind of leaves some of us small businesses who need the support out in the lurk. And I wanted to be able to step in and fill some of that gap. So it's a passion project. It's not something that I was like, oh, I'm going to retire off of this. I'm going to make so much money. It's going to be amazing. But it was like, what, if I can swing it without like going broke and losing my mind, like, let me do it.
So how's it been so far?
It's been good. The first couple of years, I was like, come on, Jesus. I'm gonna need you to get these revenues right. Because there was so much money that was invested that I didn't even anticipate. Right? I'm spreadsheet queen. I was like, I'm including tax and shipping costs in this sucker. But there are things like, oh, I need to run all of the Ethernet wires. That's $75 each. I need extra power outlets. The staff that I had that I thought would be able to work in both businesses, this one business takes up most of the time. And so that salary became overhead that I was not expecting. So there are those things. In the first couple of years, where we just hit our 4-year anniversary, but the first couple of years, it was a little stressful, because I was like, okay, I'm trying to help folk out. I had this feeling I could have backed out at the beginning before I spent this money to launch this business. But now that I'm like, okay, we've paid off the loan, it's growing, it's sustainable, it's profitable. I'm like, okay, God, all right, we've done a good work.
Yeah, it's making sense now.
Yeah, and we do some community lunches every quarter or so. And so it's always good to just see people, past members, current members, to see their faces and even to hear their gratitude. Not that, you want to go where you can get your bat pat on, but it feels nice. It feels nice when someone says thank you, because you know that you've invested so much time, energy, money, some bad decisions, some good decisions into helping them succeed. It feels good to be like, okay, they're grateful. Nice. Amen.
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 Yeah, that's good. This maxim, know yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
How does that fit into how you put your business together? I like your bubbly personality. Is this your business structured around that? What do you feel about that? Knowing yourself and running a business.
So I think when I first hear know yourself, I think about how I identify, right, and how I process things. And for me as a believer, I am who I am in Christ first, right? More than, what my mama and daddy taught me, more than the great mentors and advisors that I've had. How I operate first and foremost comes through how God made me and what I think would please him. Right. I always go to the parable of the talents. Right. And I'm like, okay, some people had 5, some people had 3, one person had 1. I am not shy or insecure about the fact that God gave me 5 talents. Right. I own that, and I understand that God expects, which one of my favorite business terms, ROI, return on investment, right? God expects a great return on investment that he's made in me. And so that kind of drives how I do who I am. But I also know that in my makeup is that bubbly personality, is that Shala from Kentucky who owns being a little Southern, a little city, right? And so I think that in business, as I operate, I definitely feel like there are people who have worked with me or continue to work with me because of the personality, because they feel like, even here at Creative Colony, people are like, oh, I just feel so welcome and warm. And there's one guy who was a member for some time who was also a believer, and he was like, I just feel like the Holy Spirit is here. Like there is peace here. I can be out and about everywhere and I'm stressed out, but when I'm here, I feel peace. And I was like, well, that's kind of intentional, because I had people, ministers, pastors, my close friends, come and pray over every space, every chair, every desk, every wall, every doorway in year 1 that this space opened. And that was very intentional, because I thought, you know what, there might be people that I can influence, whether it is a full conversion or a seed that gets planted. Because they've had an experience here at Creative Colony. We've been able to support churches that have, used this as their office for meetings, for, planning, whatever else. There was a season where, especially when I was younger, maybe 16 to 20-ish, where people didn't like my bubbly. I got persecuted for being bubbly.
Too much energy.
Yeah, too much. So like flippant and like, I don't know, Valley Girl. I don't know. It was just, they couldn't handle all the glory I was giving them yet. I guess it looks better on the 35-year-old than on an 18-year-old. So I had to go through this season of trying to be more serious and more professional, so that they could take me seriously and, and like see my brain and not my laugh, or I don't know. But as I've, matured, I can bring in who just I naturally am. I like to think I'm fun to be around, and I like to, be fun and personable and approachable. And I think those things are very important in doing business. You'll find that you're going to get more clients that way, when they feel like, okay, like, what you're doing, but I also like working with you. I also like talking to you. I don't feel stressed out. I don't feel like you're going to overwhelm me. And a lot of those things, again, go back to, well, what do I think Jesus would do, right? How would Jesus be interacting with people? How would he approach people? He had a way of making the outcast feel welcome and warm. He had a way. I also like the feisty parts of Jesus. It's kind of like my favorite, like cracking the whip, letting you know about yourself. I'm like, that's the sassy Shala who's like, yes, Jesus, all of that. But I do think about those things. I was like, what? I want people to feel welcome, and I want them to feel warm, and I eventually want the opportunity to speak into their life personally, right? If they get cut off and they don't build a trust with me and who I am as a person, when they are going through that challenging time or that hard time, they're not going to come to me and say, hey, Shala, can you help me? I've noticed this about you, or I've noticed that, can we talk? Can we have tea or coffee? They're going to go find somebody else. And that somebody else might not point them to Jesus. So I don't know if that was the long.
That was good. That's why I did not interrupt you. I think that was a good way of describing yourself and knowing yourself. And part of knowing yourself, I believe, is also knowing your personality and being comfortable in your own skin, which is something I appreciate about, just meeting you. You're comfortable in your skin. But it gets to a point, and this is my understanding with business and with life, when you are comfortable with who you are, people tend to be comfortable with you.
Oh, yeah.
Irrespective of whatever personality you have. If you're comfortable being introverted, there's just that calmness.
Yeah.
People kind of sense that there's congruence within yourself.
Yeah.
And then it kind of translates out.
Yeah, I think people like authenticity, right? No one likes the fake person.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know anyone who's like, oh my God, they're so fake. I love it. Like, that's not happening, right? They love people who are like, you know what? You are who you are. You a little funky, you a little rough around the edges, but it's who you are. And you own it. And I know that's what I should expect. And okay, like, this is you. That's your lane. That's cool. Authenticity is one of my core values, as a person. Like, be authentic.
Be true to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is a corollary of knowing yourself. I like that. And so you mentioned before we started recording that you're not just Black.
I am half Filipino.
Okay.
My mom is from the Philippines. And technically, even though someone would look at me and be like, oh, she Black. Or I get Dominican. And I get Puerto Rican, right? I think there's a lot of Filipinos in those countries too. They're everywhere. I'm technically more Filipino than I am Black, because my dad's side of the family is very mixed. Right? There's white, there's Cherokee Indian. And so, I got, his aunt had blue eyes with fair hair, and could pass for white. My nieces and nephews, because of the recessive gene, have gray eyes with brown curly hair. So we are like this coat of many colors. But no one's walking up to be like, hey, are you Filipino? Like, that doesn't happen. Or I usually get, especially if I'm talking to some Filipinos. I remember I used to teach at Howard. And I went to one of my students' graduation events, and her best friend was Filipino, and their parents were Filipino. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm half Filipino. They look at me, and they're like, really? Like, a whole half? Like, I was like, yeah, my mom is from Manila, born and raised. They're like, she's whole Filipino? Yes, I am therefore half Filipino. They were just in shock. They're like, I don't believe it. I was like, yeah, no.
Do you speak any of their languages? Or do you understand, I think it's Tagalog?
Tagalog, yes. Yeah. I was trying to learn it, right? I've done 2 mission trips to the Philippines as an adult. And for the first trip, I got my Rosetta Stone. I was like practicing, learning, getting some of the language down. It's a challenging language. And I was in the Philippines. I was on a mission trip first, and then my mom was meeting me for a few extra days in country. And so I'm trying to talk with the kids. They're kind of laughing at my accent. That's cool. But they knew what I was saying. And then when my mom comes in country, she's hearing me talk. And then she starts teasing me because she's a meanie. And she's like, your accent is terrible. And I suddenly got so insecure, and I just stopped.
Aww.
I just stopped. I was like, I'm just going to use the translator, because that's what they're here for. Or, yeah, I felt very, very insecure. But I was like, Mama, your accent sucks too. Actually,
that's what happens when you're learning something new, particularly languages.
Yeah.
You need a lot of encouragement growing up with them. Now that we have that background in place, how has it been being a person of color, particularly a woman of color? And so that you can answer this together. Okay. What are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats?
A whole SWOT analysis.
Let's SWOT analysis this. Let's get all businessy on this right now.
I don't know if I can think that sequential.
No,
so I think that there are times where it's been great, and there are times when I've kind of felt out of place. So the great times I went to historically black high school, followed by historically black college, right? So I came to DC to go to Howard. And so a lot of people looked like me or variations of me. I suddenly met all sorts of black people. Did not know that there was a Trinidad and Tobago. I thought everything was Jamaica and the Caribbean, I'm sure. Just extremely ignorant, to kind of the world. And so in that season, and then at my first job, the owner was a black woman. My supervisor was a black woman. The senior VP was a black woman. My client, who was at Microsoft, black woman. Another colleague of mine, black woman. So I was fortunate that in that season, being nurtured and cultivated, I was surrounded by successful black women. That made me feel it was not odd for me to see myself in those positions, right? Where I think a lot of people do not have that experience that I've had. So it's hard for them to imagine, or it stretches their mind to imagine, where I was like, oh, I see it all everywhere. Like everyone around me who's pouring into me. And they were my first clients, actually. They were the ones who invested in me to grow and nurture my business. But then after I left that PR firm that worked in diversity PR and marketing, and I started my own business, all of a sudden now my clients did not look like me. Right. I had to sit at tables and sell my work to old white men. And that felt very awkward. That felt like they are never going to hire me. I'm exact opposite. Why would they choose me? A little black girl that, to do this. And I mean, they did. It was amazing. And I think, it was the Lord. And I was able to at least sell, my skill or my personality at the very least under the table. I'm like shaking. I'm like, don't lift your arms. Your armpits are sweating. Like, this is terrible. Like, just keep it down. But it was those times that and then I knew that I was young, right? I'm 23, 24, trying to play with the big dogs, or at least what felt like the big dogs. And so I had to okay, Charlotte, how do I project? How do I look like I'm 28? How do I look like I'm 29? But it was this man, this feels scary. And I really had to be like, I got this. I'm going to own this and we're going to go for it. And it doesn't matter. And I think as I continue to grow as a professional and with the clients, I was just like, man, you are so lucky to work with me. This is amazing. And it would be interesting because I have a picture outside that's my old design team. And it's me, 2 white women, a white guy, and an Asian guy.
And you're connected to all of them somehow.
I am. They were my employees, right?
What I'm even saying is that you have white somewhere in your lineage, you have Asian in your lineage, right? You have black.
I got all of that there. I got all of that. But I remember one of my colleagues and friends were like, "Who are the white people?" I'm like, do you mean who are my employees? Who are my talented team that helped me, build a successful business, right? That racism goes both ways, right? But it was interesting having
that prejudice, because racism is a different level.
Yes, very true.
All right.
Very true.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is that with that team, we'd go on site to meet a client. And I think there are some clients who were surprised that I was the boss, right? They're like, are you sure it wasn't the white guy who's the boss? I was like, no, that's my son. He's with me. These are my babies, and I think that as I interacted with them, it became clear that, I was the alpha in the room, but it's, I think now I enjoy it. I enjoy, especially Montgomery County, because it is so diverse. It is now a county where, the minority is the majority, right? Because there's so many ethnic cultures from all over the world that are in this county. And so it just feels different. So now I kind of think like, I am the black woman in charge here. Yes. And I'm going to relate to everybody, because I think that because I grew up in a pretty much all white church in Kentucky. There were 2 of us, both mixed in the church, that were of color, with her mom. Her mom was African American. And so I'm extremely comfortable with lots of different types of people. And so I know how to make my way and to fit the groove. of how everyone, behaves. And what's interesting, at church, we had this kind of a cultural sensitivity training thing. And, people talked about how as African Americans, they felt like they had to kind of assimilate or adjust to fit into white culture. And I was like, I've had the opposite experience where I was in Kentucky. I was in an all-white church. I was in the advanced class, and before I went to the historically black high school, that meant that I was one of a handful of minority kids in the classroom. And so everyone told me I talk white, I sound white, I behave white, mostly because I was a straight A student, which was really sad. And so I've had the opposite, where I've had to figure out how to assimilate into black culture. I've had to learn how to speak, because I got teased, you speak so proper. I'm like, because I know grammar. Like, how is somebody gonna pass this test? But it was this opposite experience for me, where I'm like, I had to learn how to like be cool. I mean, it sounds so terrible, but it was real for me, where I felt like, man, I don't look like my mama. Don't do my hair like your mama do your hair, because my mom was like, I can't do that hair. You got that Negro hair. And I was like, yes, mommy, I do. It does not look like your hair. So it was just, I don't know. I've had this very weird, interesting, but I'm grateful for experience. Growing up in Kentucky, there were people who told me I look exotic.
Exotic is one of those words that's so loaded in America. Yeah. It could mean it could mean something nice from some people, but mostly it means that you're weird.
Yeah, it just all depends on who is saying it and what they mean. And I was like, okay, exotic, all right. That's why I was like, I know I live up the street from a strip club, but that's not the kind of exotic I'm hoping for. But they just weren't used to the kind of cultural mix, right? In Louisville, you're black or you're white, right? And my oldest brother had lots of challenges because he's very fair skinned, straight black hair, and he clearly didn't fit with white, and he clearly didn't fit with black. And coming from California, which is where most of his childhood was, I mean, everybody looked like him, right? It's so diverse. Mexico, Philippine, like everything. And then having to move into like Kentucky was really hard on him, like culturally trying to fit in as a kid and not really knowing where he belonged.
I totally understand that. I've had to fit into so many cultures that, but I think it's one of the things that's been helpful for me personally. And for anybody, initially it's tough when you're a kid.
Yeah.
But I think it's a skill that if you learn, you're able to connect with people pretty quick. Being authentically yourself and being comfortable with who you are, wherever you are. I think it's one of those lessons you learn if you have had to go through the kind of experiences that you shared.
Right.
Where you're just like, all right, I don't fit into any one of these cubicles or these holes that society has made for me. I'm going to stand out, and I'm going to be comfortable standing out.
Yeah.
And being myself.
Yeah. I was thinking back to our SWOT analysis, and in this country, if you ever decide that you're going to do business with the government on any level, there are benefits to being a black woman, right? Because you're checking off 2 diversity boxes for their requirements, right? You got 2 boxes, woman owned, minority owned, or African American owned, right? So I definitely had a lot of people here in the DC area where a lot of people do government work, not my thing. But they're like, you need to do work with the government. Like, you could get so much business because you got the 2 check boxes, right? You are like the ideal, contractor, prime contractor, or some contractor that could easily like help people win business and therefore win business for yourself. And I was like, great opportunity, not my speed. Don't really desire or like working with government. But that was, a great opportunity. Like, people just like look at you and they're like, money. I see money.
money.
Money. I'm getting all my percentages and quotas in with one shot.
This is a more personal question. There are times faith and business pull in 2 separate directions. Can you think of a time when that was? If you can, or can speak to it generally, and what you did or what you think you would do in that situation.
What the thing that kind of stands out to me when I think about faith in business, there are times, especially early in business, where, you don't have very large like projects. So eventually we're doing more websites and reports. So in the beginning, you're doing like little flyers and stuff. And I would get, the guy who needs the club flyer where, girls with thongs on get in free. And I was like, yeah, no, I do feel very broke right now. But no, like this is not happening. I am not using my talent for that because I don't think that that would honor God. So there are things like that. And in my head, that's kind of a small thing where I had to make sure I drew the line about what I would and would not do. Projects that I would work on that I feel like, I don't think God wants me or gave me this talent to support that. Right. And so I had to be able to say no. To pass up business. Sometimes it were larger projects as time went on where I was like, I don't think this is what I should be supporting with my talent. I think about being an employer in a small business where I was not required to provide benefits to my employees, right? You don't hit those requirements until you're several employees deep. The business person, a lot of business people will say, I'm not required. You don't get to have health insurance. You don't get to have all of these other things that are kind of needed, right? Or that are important because I'm not required and I'm going to go ahead and save my money and pad my pockets. Where I said, no, like I want insurance. Why am I not going to provide insurance for you when I know it's something that I would want myself, right? You treat other people like you want to be treated. Mm-hmm. I want to be treated with great health insurance. So you should be treated with great health insurance too. And so I look back at that and I'm like, you know what? I could have made so much more money. I could have made a lot more money if I did not provide platinum level health insurance to my employees. I would have made more money if I had them working 45, 50 hours a week instead of a 37 and a half hour week, because I would have just, especially in the design world, I think you are a slave to these projects and these clients. And because there are so many designers, there are a lot of design factories that kind of churn them and burn them. Right. And I was like, no, that's not how I want to treat my team. Sure, it kind of makes for good business because I'm going to make more money or save a lot of money. But I don't think that this is right. Right. If you know the right thing you should do, but you fail to do it, it's sin. And I was like, that's not right. That's not how we should treat people. I don't think that's how Jesus would treat these people, if he were their employer. And what I found is that when I made decisions, granted, I didn't make as much money as, sometimes I struggle. I'm like, oh man, I could go work for somebody else in corporate America and make twice as much money as I pay myself, as an entrepreneur. But I had the most loyal employees, whether or not they were of faith. They were so loyal to me. They still are, even though they're not my employees anymore. I still feel like they're loyal to me because I helped them. I taught them. I trained them. I brought them in. I supported them. The issues that were important to, I gave to their fundraisers and things like that. When they lost people in their family, I was there. I was like, yo, work from wherever. Like, you need to be home with your mother in the Midwest. Like, be home with your mother in the Midwest. It doesn't matter to me. Our clients will be fine. They will be taken care of. And I think those things, when you make decisions that say, you know what, let me be more like Jesus in this business, you get the reward, right? Having churn 'em and burn 'em like employees is taxing, right? It is taxing on your time and your energy. So you kind of you have to retrain people, right? You have to get familiar. Like, I think it slows down the process. You might make more money, but you're going to be stressed out. And I was like, I got enough stress as it is. I don't need to add more to my list. So that's where I kind of see this faith in business, where I'm like, okay, I need to always choose faith over business. Or at the very least, let the faith guide the way that I'm going to do the business. Because in the end, like you had mentioned earlier, we can't worship money, right? God has shown that mess comes and goes, right? At his will. At his desire. There are people who are super talented, super experienced, super knowledgeable, great past performance. And like that, it can all be taken away, right? Or you can be okay or mediocre and God can just breathe on your business. And all of a sudden, it's just like, whoa, that totally happened. I have no idea how that happened. God just breathed on it. And so I'm like, you know what, just walk where God tells you to walk, do what he tells you to do, because he knows what he's doing. I was reading Exodus this morning in 14 when they're crossing the Red Sea, and it just says, the Lord will fight for you. You just need to be silent. And I was like, you know what? There are fights everywhere, battles everywhere, or just things that you just need to be still and silent about and trust that, you know what? God is moving and he's working. I have his favor, and he'll provide, he'll move in ways that I could never make it happen of my own strength. So that's where I kind of, I just lean. I'm like, okay, God, I have seen you do miraculous things. I've seen him do miraculous things, and there's no reason for me to try to become the miracle worker. I just need to let him do what he's going to do. When God fights, it's an automatic KO. Like, I just need to, stand on the side. Like, yeah, Jesus. Go, Jesus. You got this, boo.
Hey, we're standing in one of the miracles, or we're sitting in one of the miracles right now, right?
Yeah, honey. Miracle. Miracle. So I'm super grateful for what God is doing, and
that's great,
and the favor he's had.
I like how you talked about what you did for your employees. I love the spirit of that. Have you had any challenging employees? And how did you sort that out? How have you had to deal with that kind of situation?
There were some challenges. I was pretty blessed in the people that I had as employees. There was a season with an employee where I started to feel like they were getting a little too big for their britches, and it started to create tension that hadn't been there and that didn't need to be there. So we developed an exit strategy so that person could move on. I had a challenge where the person I hired had great personality, great fit, because sometimes I feel like you can teach the technical, but you can't always teach character and personality, the soft skills. But the technical skills weren't getting it done. And that was stressful because I lost thousands and thousands of dollars in a matter of months, right, on salary, and, a lack of productivity to be able to deliver client, billing hours that I didn't feel like I could bill, right? I felt like it would be dishonest or lacking of integrity to bill the client for time spent when the deliverable was, I couldn't even deliver it, right? That would be, I'm sure other people were like, well, it is what it is. I'm going to send you this invoice. I was like, no, I can't do that. So that was a little stressful because it was the season where I was trying to find the right person, and I just was, overwhelmed, and I probably, just got too excited too soon. And then there was one situation where I had a designer, and, the team was a little frustrated with, I guess, how they were, what they did. I loved that person. I was like, come here, my baby. Give this person a chance, and so it took a little more patience and a little more grooming. And in time, he came in, but had I just kind of listened to the voices that said, oh, whatever they were feeling, I would have lost out on a really great employee, who was super good to me and, super good to this company, their work ethic, their talent. They were young and they needed somebody to help them, grow. So, those are my kind of employee experiences, some more challenging than others, but in general, man, I've been lucky. I have been super, super lucky, or blessed, with the people who have come on board, most of them staying for, a number of years. There was a season where I'm like, I don't even have to write proposals anymore. They could write the proposals, do the project, execute the project. I didn't even have to see it. And then they would send the invoice too. And then if I was gone, they would deposit the check. They had this well-worked engine going. That was such a beautiful season. I'm like, can I have it back, Lord? Bring it back. Bring it back. It was so beautiful. So I in general, I feel super, super lucky, super blessed. And always wanting to hire people that I had to feel like they were the right fit. And that's one of the things that I do love about entrepreneurship, is that I get to control who's in my space.
Yeah.
Right? For the most part, right? Clients can get a little iffy, but the people who are regularly in your space, you have some control over that. Whereas when you're working for somebody else, I hear everybody with their stories about the crazy coworker and the crazy boss and the crazy this and that and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, can't relate. I have no idea what that feels like. Sorry, sucks for you.
I totally get it. So speaking about clients, have you had difficult clients?
Yes.
And what are some of the challenges, and how did you get to deal with them?
So some of the challenges relate to who you do business with, right? So I've learned in my design business, there became a season where we only worked, nonprofit organizations. And we did that because we were particular about the work that we wanted to do. I wanted to feel like the work that we were doing was making a difference, was serving other people, right? Jesus said he came to serve, not to be served. So I wanted that to be firmly in our mission of how we worked and what we did. And I learned that, I sometimes working with small business owners, like super small business owners, and working with friends are not always the best for business. I had to avoid the clients that were going to nickel and dime me, right? Nonprofits, at the very least, some of them will nickel and dime you if they're like a super small nonprofit. That wasn't always who we worked with. We typically worked with larger organizations that had like director of communications and an accounting department and, a system, right? It's in the budget or it's not in the budget, right? We got the money or we don't. If not, we're going to move on, right? Whereas people who are typically in the earlier stages, smaller stages of business, they're like, how can I get it? Like, I'm going to need, so can we move around? I was like, that's exhausting. So I was like, you know what? I can't, those are not my ideal clients, right? And the best way for me to deal with that is just not to work with them. Right? To figure out where are the right clients, what are their organizations like, what's their business model like. Let me focus on those and just to be able to kind of have an ear to the things they say in a call or in an email that kind of send up the red flags. I'm like, you're going to be stressful to work with. So there's that, right? Really being able to know your niche, who you're working with, and to filter out the people who are not that great to work with, who are going to be a little more stressful than what you need, or who think that they're paying you too much and so therefore they deserve the world. Like, you're so expensive, like I should get everything in the kitchen sink. Whereas I'm like, baby, this budget's small. You better be glad you get a phone call with me. So it's the mentality that you have to be mindful of who you work with. And then there are just clients that were just, dude, you're exhausting. Like, why are you calling me all the time? Why are you emailing me all the time? Your expectations are all over the place. You're not organized. And so those were, clients where you got to send the email that says, here, I have prepared a CD, back when people use CDs. I have prepared a CD with all of your client files on it. Have a great day. Find another designer to work with because, this ain't gonna work. Because there was a client who, I think I was on vacation, and when he was communicating with my designer to get things done, who I had always worked with a client, she was stepping in to make sure that things still happen and whatnot. And the way when I got back, the way she said that he was speaking to her, and made her feel, and she was just like, whoa, buddy, like, I'm just trying to help you out. Like, I'm just trying to get stuff done. I was like, oh no, we don't treat my people like this. She's way more valuable to me than you are. And it's just not okay. It's not okay to be a jerk. And so I was like, yep, CD's in the mail. Enjoy that.
Bye, Felicia.
Bye, Felicia. So you have to, you do have to have those kind of times where you're just like, oh, this just ain't gonna work. And I think that's one of the things that I do like about my photography business. It's a lot less stressful, right? It's not long proposals and past performance case studies and all of these things. You shoot it, you finish it and you go. And hopefully they like it based upon, the other images that you shot. But there isn't this super long engagement over several months and back and forth and rounds of revisions. And so I said this, but what I really meant was that. And all of those things that just are like, I can't deal with that. So I was like, you know what, Lord, I think I'm good. I think you have released me from this business. And, I loved what I do. I still, love and enjoy that. But I'm like, yeah, I'm in a different season in life. I feel old. I'm not old, but I feel very old. I'm like, I've been doing this too long. I've been in this entrepreneurship hustle going on 14 years. I mean, I'm tired. That's how I feel. So I'm just like, I just need to dial back. And I was like, God, I just want to breathe, right? Because I've run multiple businesses. I work part-time for a church. And I'm like, I am tired and I need to do less. One of my priorities for 2018 was have one less business. I was like, yes, we'll make that happen in 2018. But it's, to kind of get back to the question, like, you can only deal with so many clients, right? You can only make so many people happy without sacrificing your own life, your own family, your own,
sanity.
Sanity, yeah.
So as we round off, what are your tips for anybody going into business, particularly women of color stepping into business?
What my first thought was, run away. No, don't run away. So, I always like to make sure people do a very serious gut check. I was talking with a young entrepreneur the other day, and I was saying, not everyone's cut out for this, right? Not everyone has the chops to be an entrepreneur. A lot of people glamorize it. I've seen this a lot in African American churches where they're like, the road to freedom and wealth is entrepreneurship, and you gotta work for yourself and do for yourself because ain't nobody gonna do for you. And I was like, I can go in corporate America, make twice as much money as I current, and I will be fine. I will be A-okay with the direct deposit on the 15th and the 30th of the month. Trust and believe, okay? In order for entrepreneurs to succeed, they need employees, usually. So sometimes your role is to be an employee, and that's okay. You got to know what your fit is, right? And what your temperament is. Can you deal with the risk of entrepreneurship? Not everyone can. Do you have the business acumen as well as the talent to think full circle of all that business implies? A lot of creative types like me get into business because they love the creativity, right? They love doing what they want to do, but they suck as a business owner, right? They don't have the mindset. They don't know how to deal with their accounting. They don't know how to deal with sales and marketing. They're just a great technician. So great book to read, The E-Myth. Excellent book. It changed my life. I read it in like 3 days. I would be at stop signs or stoplights trying to read the next few pages because it was so good. And it really helped me to rethink about how I do business and what my role is in business. And so after you have gut checked and you know that this is your calling, right? This is what God has for you and not just what everybody else has told you should be doing. I always tell people, get advisors, get mentors, read books, listen to podcasts, like get all of the information and knowledge you can, because you can either learn it the hard way or you can seek advice from people who have already learned it the hard way and learn from their mistakes, right? You don't have to make all the mistakes in order to get it, right? And I spent a lot of time in my early days, sitting at the feet of other business owners, women who look like me, and seeking advice, having them critique my website when I would launch a new website and list my products, list my clients. They gave me such great feedback, such great networks. You got to have a network. I don't know that I would have been able to start my business unless the good Lord was just like, honey, I'm making serious magic now. But having a network, that company that I worked for was so integral to my first clients, right? They were my first clients. They sent me my first clients. A lot of my church members were my first clients, right? I was coaching someone who had no network, no faith organization, no sorority organization, like nothing. It was just her and her friends, and that was it. And she didn't like networking. And I was like, I don't know if I can help you. This is going to be, that was really, really hard. You know, for me as a coach, I was like, how am I going to really help you here? Because I know how important that network, that community was for me to be able to launch my business. And it was integral when it came time to launching Creative Colony, and integral when it came time to launching my photography business, being able to reach to the networks, have them spread the word, be some of my first clients, be some of my first free clients, right? To help me build my portfolio. So seek advice, mentors, read books, network, build those relationships. Those are things that are going to be really important. And then go back to my original business plan. Dear Heavenly Father, please bless the work of my hands. Amen.
Thank you for listening to this episode. You can support this podcast by going to patreon.com/friendsatwork. That's patreon.com/friendsatwork. You can also reach me by email at myfriendtoye@gmail.com. My Facebook page is Friends at Work Podcast, and my Twitter handle is at Friends at Work US. Join me next time for another episode of Friends at Work Podcast with Ade Toye. Bye for now.